The idea here was to move from one billboard to the next, and that is a spatial movement, of course, and that's exactly the theme of this little episode of the making of this music video, the spatial freedom, the spatial movement, so to say. And to be honest, with a budget of pretty much zero, there is not even a thought about renting a crane for a camera move like that. There was no option to even pay for a license to film there. And I do not even have in mind to rent the parking lot for a whole day. And if you know how much a single car per day costs, then you can imagine how much a crane eats up in terms of space, in money and time and so on. You need maybe 10 or 15 people alone, catering service and unions and so on. Endurance. So no way to make that real, at least for this music video. If you have a big production, that might be different. So there was only camera mapping, and to do this in this way, to connect finally the band with the city in the way I see it, not with the tourist highlights, of course, which is, from my point of view, totally boring. We have seen all of that. But to see more of LA as a normal being that lives in that city would see everything. Okay, so the idea here was, of course, how can we get a camera move like that? And we need, of course, any option to design this in the way we want. The first freedom, and that has a little bit to do with the spatial, of course, that we can move these billboards wherever we want, like this one here on top of the building. None of these billboards exist in the reality, of course. This is all just pasted in. And the beauty of camera mapping is, if done well, that we get parallax. And parallax is, for example, here, when you can't see this row of windows, and when I move it a little bit, you can see it immediately, and even from the city in the background. This is tiny little information that finally creates the illusion that you are there. It could have been a little bit more, maybe heat, maybe a little bit dust in it, and so on. But of course, there's always time that you can invest in something like that. And for me, it was more important to show you how it is set up, and the freedom finally that you can have when you have all of that in a scene, that you can move your camera here from several stories down and then 2 or 3 stories up again to this billboard here. That's a freedom that I like, and you can change this, of course, in terms of time, as we have discussed this, and of course in terms of framing, because there's a lot of information here just because we have shot only an image here. And one image more to the side or to the other side is nothing that I would consider as expensive. It becomes expensive when you have to travel back to downtown and to shoot exactly there. So hundreds of images were shot doing that, just because it cost nearly nothing and it can only help. So what I want to discuss in the next one is, of course, the limitations of all of that, because there's always a limit and there's always an option. And of course, if you want to do it in reality, you need a good planning, because you don't just do it the whole day over and over again. It's expensive. Each shot even is expensive, even if you paid all for the stuff that was upfront expensive. But inside of Cinema 4D, you have the freedom to do whatever you like, and you can move this up and down and so on. So having talked about the freedom, I have to talk a little bit about the limitations, and I do this in the next one. But before I do this, I want to show you that, of course, shortly in Cinema 4D. Here you can see the whole scene in Cinema 4D. It's quite something here with all the materials and so on. I have discussed this a little bit in the camera mapping tutorials, of course. And here I have even some geometry in, because there was parallax that I thought needs geometry, but I try normally to get away with the least amount of modeling, because it's all work, and I'm not lazy, but I hate to do stuff just it could be important. I always take a look what I really need, and I go perhaps a little bit further to have some wiggle room in it. But the truth is, there is always something that is over the top and there's something that doesn't work, and exactly between these two extreme points you have to find your way to get something that looks okay. Okay, having said that, the camera move here, and I have done several of them until I was so far happy. You might have a different idea how that has to be set up, but I want to talk in the next episode about the setup and where are the limitations of that. See you in the next one.